What's going on, sports fans? Once again, it's K-Stu to go for Vernon Speak Sports. Mostly talking about Auburn football and the rest of the SEC. I want to give a shout out to my fearless and true gang, War Eagle. Now, earlier today, there's some big news going on about Carson Beck, a very, very talented pro-style quarterback out of Jacksonville, Florida, who had initially had a hard commit to Alabama. Recently had a hard commit in a flip to Georgia. Now, the question that I have to ask is, how does Georgia keep getting these guys to flip? Well, see, a lot of people don't get, it's not all that intriguing. All Georgia's doing is taking advantage of certain little things, little intricacies in programs and getting guys to go with what they feel is going to equate into continuity. Because when I look at Georgia's program, Georgia, it has an elite program, or is headed towards elite status like Alabama, but the difference is their program isn't overturning staff every year. Because if you think about Alabama, I mean, you just don't know. At the end of the year, they're going to have an offensive coordinator that's going to go to a college. They're going to go have a defensive coordinator that's going to get promoted. And then all of a sudden, Nick Saban has to turn over his staff. And that's been the only Achilles heel in Nick Saban's program, is the fact that he just turns over his staff. And then you have a quarterback who has committed, but then he has to think about, okay, you already got Tua Tagovailoa, who is Tua's brother, who is there, and he's highly touted. So where does he fit in the program? You know what I'm saying? Then you have Carson Beck, who's committed. You know, if Tua's brother starts, where does Carson Beck fit in the program? You know what I'm saying? Those are all things that has to be considered. But then when you flip the script to Georgia, you have James Coley, who's going to be there. He's not going nowhere anytime soon, at least within Carson Beck's tenure at Georgia. All right. Also, when you look at the recruits that Georgia had this year in 2019 at quarterback, they had a 4-star recruit, but pretty much most of the recruits are not necessarily high level. So they're basically telling Carson Beck, hey, you know, you come to our program. Jake Fromm is actually leaving probably next year. So there's a spot for you. He doesn't have to go up to Alabama and deal with all that drama. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Nick Saban does an incredible job of honing the drama, but it's drama nonetheless. I mean, you turning over a staff. You got to figure out who's going to be coaching. You got to figure out every year who's going to be leaving. And at Georgia, although they have become an elite program, they still don't have this turnover factor that Alabama has. So I think Carson Beck, for now, has made the right choice in kind of getting Alabama's drama out of the way. Now, what's going to happen is Florida is still definitely in the mix. Dan Mullen has a knack for developing quarterbacks. If you think about what he was probably going to do with Cam Newton, what he did with Dak Prescott, I think Dan Mullen probably is Georgia's, and I think Georgia knows this. Dan Mullen has the opportunity on the back end, especially considering how this season goes. I really think the world's biggest cocktail party is going to be the turning point in Carson Beck's future. That's going to be the game that's going, and I think, you know, Kirby Smart and James Coley, they need to really think about this. The Georgia-Florida game this year will determine where Carson Beck goes. I think if Florida wins this game and has a pretty good season and shows some promise, I think this thing is going to go real similar to how Georgia was able to flip George Pickens away from Auburn. I think Florida on the back end has an opportunity to flip Carson Beck from Georgia. we're going to look and see how this thing unfolds. Once again, it's K Stu the GOAT for Vernon Speaks Sports. We mostly talk about Auburn football and the SEC and the rest of college football, baby. We don't discriminate. War Eagle.